to Exposing Workplace Bullying, where we pull back the curtain and have real conversations about workplace abuse. This is episode 7, What They Don't Tell You About Reporting. I'm your host, Dr. Jan Kircher. Today is the day, the big day. You've been putting up with interruptions in meetings, the sarcastic emails, the constant drip of undermining from a colleague. It's been building up for months, weighing you down, and now you finally decided, this is it. I'm reporting. You confidently walk into work almost hopeful for the first time in a very long time. You imagine yourself sitting down and walking into HR's office, laying everything out, making your case, and finally being heard. In your mind, this is the turning point. The bully gets called out, they're held accountable, the behavior stops, the workplace improves. For a moment, you feel relief and even a little bit of excitement. This is the first time in ages you're actually looking forward to walking into work. But then you open the door. It's not just human resources waiting for you. Bob, the bully, is sitting there. Your boss is in the corner, arms crossed. Suddenly, your stomach drops. Your heart races. This is not how you thought it would go. HR leans forward. Well, it's about time you got here. We've received some serious complaints, and they're about you. We have a lot to discuss, so take a seat. Here's the truth, and what no one tells you, reporting doesn't end it. More often, this is how it really plays out. You walk in expecting protection, but instead, you get re-traumatized. Reporting workplace bullying rarely brings relief. Instead of being the solution, it can turn into a trap. Not only does it fail to stop the bullying, but it can also flip the script so fast that suddenly you're the problem, the one under investigation, the one on the chopping block. That's what today's episode is about, the hidden truth behind reporting, the risks, the emotional toll, the pushback you don't see coming, and how, if you choose to report, you can prepare in a way that protects your credibility, your peace, and gives you a better chance of having your story heard. But why doesn't reporting end it? That's the real question. When we think about reporting, we assume there's a process that works. You report the problem, HR and leadership steps in, they investigate, and the behavior stops. That's how it's supposed to work. It feels logical, right? If people see what's happening, if they see the bullying, of course they'll fix it. That's what policy says. That's what the employee handbook promises. But here's the harsh reality. In bully cultures, the system is skewed from the start. The bully has already controlled the narrative behind the scenes, and your colleagues, they go along to protect themselves. So when you finally report, your story doesn't match the majority's version of events. And when the majority says you're the problem, it's easier for HR and leadership to agree than to dig for the truth. So you have to ask yourself, is this system designed to protect you? Or is it just a facade we're taught to believe in? Because when you show up to HR thinking you're going to be heard, you may be shocked to find your bully already sitting at the table. And in that moment, you wonder, why is Bob here in the meeting I asked for to report his behavior? Well, Bob is sneaky and he's been busy. While you've been trying to survive to keep your head above water, he's been behind the scenes, building alliances and partnerships. He's been currying favor with people who hold power. He's been planting seeds, maybe even filing complaints about you before you had the chance to speak. And it's not just Bob. Betty, the bystander, may have quietly aligned herself with him too. You might have thought she stayed silent because she didn't want to be bullied, but it's often deeper than that. Aligning with the bully can feel like the safer bet, even a chance to climb the ladder. So it's no accident that Betty is silent. She's there to confirm Bob's story and to ignite doubt about yours. She's been into HR too, saying you're the problem. And when you're dealing with an entire organization of Bobs and Bettys, the problems multiplies. They're confirming each other's stories, reinforcing each other's version of events. And in that environment, majority rules. It becomes them against you. The painful reality is this: Bob, the bully, holds the power, not you. And in a bully culture, people gravitate towards power because Bob can give them things you can't. And sometimes that means even abandoning fairness. It means sacrificing people like you. Which means by the time you actually report, the odds are stacked against you. The bully has already positioned themselves as the one with the power, shaping a narrative where the blame falls squarely on your shoulders. You walk into HR thinking you're finally telling your story, but the bully has been telling theirs all along, and in their version, you are the problem. That's the first hurdle of reporting. You're not starting from neutral. You're stepping into a room where alliances are already built, where the bully looks loyal and indispensable, and you look like the complainer. In fact, your report can even seem like proof or confirmation that you're the one making trouble, not the bully. So what do you do with that? You can't just walk in and say, Bob is bullying me. That only feeds the narrative the bully has already planted. You seem like the one who's complaining all the time. So what you really need to do is you need to shift how you report. I'm just going to say that one more time. You need to shift how you report. Think less about filing a complaint and more like telling a story. And not just any story, your story of bullying that spans all the incidents of bullying that you've experienced. Not just the last one or the one that happened yesterday or the big event that happened 2 weeks ago. You're telling about all of the incidents of bullying and a story with clear characters where Bob is the villain, not you. And yep, you knew it was coming. The D word. We're going to talk about documentation. It's really your silent witness. It becomes crucial and vital in reporting because it's your evidence, your field notes that help tell your story. Knowing the who, what, when, and where gives you the tools to create a picture, a timeline of workplace abuse that HR can't as easily dismiss. It might sound something like this. It started on July 25th, 2024, when Bob sent me the first email calling me a troublemaker. Since then, Bob has sent over 125 emails with insults calling me lazy, saying I'm not too bright, ridiculing my work. And I have those emails if you'd like cooperating evidence. Do you hear the difference? Instead of saying, Bob is cyberbullying me, you're grounding your story in facts, dates, numbers, patterns. That's what shifts the narrative back in your favor. But here's where people trip up a little. They only bring up the last bad incident. Bullying isn't one bad day. It's a series of unfortunate events stacked one on top of the other. If you report just the most recent event, it sounds isolated, and isolated problems get brushed off. That's why you need the details and organize them in a timeline from when it started to where you're at. You need to show the pattern and the trends to the person you're reporting to. They need to know the extent of the abuse that you're experiencing. It's not that Bob rolled his eyes at you in one meeting. It's every time you speak up in a team meeting, Bob rolls his eyes. That's not once, that's over 250 times. Now, that paints a very different picture than just an eye roll. And here's where cooperating evidence strengthens your story. When you weave in emails, meeting notes, or even witness accounts, you shift your report from my word against his to a documented patterns others can see. For example, on August 12th, Bob interrupted me twice during our budget meeting. The official meeting minutes show that my section was left incomplete. I've logged 4 other meetings this quarter where the exact same thing happened, and in each case, the minutes confirm I did not get to finish my presentation. That kind of storytelling, backed by timelines and evidence, makes your report much harder to dismiss. Instead of a snapshot, you're giving them the whole film reel with receipts. But that brings us to the next obstacle in reporting. How do you frame the impact of Bob's bullying to people in power? How do you get them to actually care that it's happening to you? Well, you have to speak their language. You have to speak the language of the people you're reporting to. If it's HR, remember, they care most about perception, keeping up the image that this is a good place to work. So when you report, use that lens. Instead of centering the impact only on you, connect Bob's bad behavior to what HR and leadership value: teamwork, productivity, client services, and yes, even the bottom line. Let me show you what I mean. If you walk in and say, Bob's behavior is giving me anxiety, I feel like I can't concentrate anymore. That's real. That's your truth. But in the HR playbook, that often gets dismissed as a personal issue. Now, listen to the same situation reframed. Bob's behavior has disrupted the last 12 team meetings. He has interrupted me 25 times as I tried to report on our team's goals and challenges. When he interrupts, people stop contributing, deadlines slip, and client deliverables are delayed. This has been happening for 3 months, and client issues are not being addressed. This affects productivity and ultimately the bottom line. And here are the agendas and meetings notes to show the drop in productivity. You can also see how the same issues keep showing up on the agenda because we're not getting those addressed. Do you hear the difference? The first one centers on you and your feelings, which are totally valid. But the second one centers around the organizational impact, showing how Bob's behavior hurts the team, the clients, and the company results. That's the language that HR understands. Reframing your story from an I impact to a we impact makes it less likely HR and leadership will dismiss it. Hopefully, it forces them to see that this isn't about you. It's about the overall health of the organization. And here's another layer. When you weave in corroborating evidence, emails, meeting notes, project delays, you're not just telling a story, you're proving it. You move from Bob stresses me out to Bob's behavior is actively costing this organization time, money, and credibility. So now you've got your timeline, your evidence, and your story reframed in a way HR can hear. But preparation is not just about documents. It's also about you. The reality is reporting takes a toll. How you deliver the story matters as much as the story itself. Do not let HR be the first place you say it out loud. Practice with someone you trust. Saying it out loud helps you catch where you stumble. where emotion takes over or where the details are not clear. That practice can make the difference between walking into HR shaky or walking in steady and confident. But here's the other part. Preparation isn't just about telling your story smoothly. You also need to prepare for pushback because it's coming. When I went into HR, I thought they'd be interested in facts. Instead, I got comments like, "Are you sure this isn't just a personality conflict?" Or, "Maybe you're too sensitive." I realized quickly they weren't questioning Bob. They were questioning me. That's the reality. HR or your supervisor may already have a version of the story in their heads, one the bully has planted. And when you report and you're telling your side of the story, you're pushing back on a narrative about you that's already been written. So here's how you prepare for that. You should expect minimization. You may hear things like, "It's just a misunderstanding," or "That's just how Bob is. You just have to learn how to deal with him." Your job is to calmly bring it back to the pattern and the impact. You might also be dealt a little deflection. They may steer the conversation to your behavior and away from Bob's. "Are you managing the stress well?" Or, "Maybe you're misinterpreting." Don't get flustered. Redirect with your documentation. "I understand, but here are the meeting minutes that show my section wasn't complete because of repeated interruptions and disruptions by Bob." They may also blame shift and suggest that the real problem in their organization is you. This is where your preparation protects you because you can point to timelines and evidence and patterns and outcomes that show Bob is the real problem. Pushback is part of the process. You don't have to be perfect. Just keep pulling it back to Bob's behaviors, the patterns, and the facts. Reporting is going to be tense. There's no way around that. So, when you need to, take a moment to ground yourself. Do some deep breathing and keep yourself calm. And let me show you what that actually sounds like in the room, because it's one thing to talk about pushback in theory. It's another to feel it in real time. So just imagine yourself sitting there in HR's office and they look at you and say, "Well, Jan, are you sure this isn't just a personality clash? Because from where I sit, it looks like you two just don't get along." I understand why it might look like that, but this isn't about personalities. Bob has interrupted me in 12 straight meetings, 25 times in total. You can see in the minutes how my updates never get finished and deadlines have slipped. That's as a direct result of Bob's interruptions. Or maybe you're just being overly sensitive. Not everyone takes Bob so personally, Jan. I hear you. But here are 3 client complaints that came in after those missed updates. That's not sensitivity. That's a measurable impact on our ability to meet our clients' needs. Frankly, Jan, it sounds like you need to adjust how you're handling stress. Maybe you're misinterpreting things because you're under so much pressure. That's interesting. The reality is this: when Bob interrupts, others stop contributing. And that's led to an increase in client complaints because we're just not as productive. This is about Bob's bad behavior, and it's damaging our teamwork and productivity. Notice what happened. I didn't argue. I didn't get flustered. I redirected back to the facts. That calm, steady presence shifts the power. And when you prepare, that's exactly what you're giving yourself: the ability to stay grounded when pushback comes. But staying grounded helps when you're reporting, but it doesn't make reporting any easier. Reporting takes something out of you. It's not a clean fix. It's super risky. It's draining, and it forces you to relive every detail, every humiliation, every interruption. You walk into that room to report, and instead of the bully being on trial, it feels like you are. And that takes a huge emotional toll. And yet, when you're being bullied, people often treat reporting as the one and only obvious solution. Coworkers, leaders, even friends outside of work might say, "You have to tell HR. You can't let this keep happening. Do it for the team." But here's the truth. Reporting is a choice, not an obligation. You don't owe it to anyone. Sometimes the risk feels too great, and protecting yourself means holding back. Other times, the weight gets too heavy, the damage too deep, and you decide it has to stop. That's when reporting stops being something others push you to do and becomes something you claim for yourself. If you do report, tilt the odds in your favor. Prepare. Frame your story. Anchor it in evidence. Reporting isn't about being liked. It's about being undeniable. And that's where we'll leave it for today. In our next episode, we'll wrap up this season, reflecting on what we've covered and talking about what it takes to keep going in a workplace that is hostile. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. If this episode hit home, check out stopbullyculture.com. That's where I share tools, resources, and real talk to help you deal with workplace abuse. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Until next time.
They gaslight and plot, play their games. Witness a smile, you're part of the shame. Your boss stays silent, closing the door. How many voices will they ignore? The bully lies, the brave get burned. The office watches, no lessons learned. Your boss hides, truth gets colder. It's time to stop the bully culture.